Hello,
How's it going?
living the dream.
Yeah, awesome. Same here, man. Um, well, thanks for joining. I think people are popping on and yeah, I've got a little introduction I'll do and then we can get to chatting. So hello everyone, welcome to Voice One on Air. My name is Danny Scott. I'm a professional voice actor as well as the school director at Voice One. For anyone new to Voice One is a voiceover school based in San Francisco, but due to the miracle of the internet, it's available worldwide. We have classes for everyone from beginner to professional in commercial narration, animation, video games, toys, and everything in between, with a robust curriculum in voiceover and acting. Our location, as I said, is our studio in San Francisco, but we've also got online Zoom classes and workshops year round. Check out our website at voiceone.com or email us at classes@voiceone.com. So our guest today is Tom Celia. Round of applause, everyone. Tom was a voiceover agent at CESD in New York City for 15 years and then spent 4 years as an agent in San Francisco at JE Talent. But nowadays, Tom is the casting manager at 2K Games, and he's been involved in casting Mafia Definitive Edition, WWE 2K Battlegrounds, NBA 2K21, PGA Tour 2K21, XCOM Chimera Squad, WWE 2K20, Borderlands 3, and Civ 6. And I'm sure a ton more that he just can't talk about yet because they're all top secret. Tom, thanks so much for being here. I'm so happy to have you as my guest today.
Thank you.
Yeah, and this is, it's an interview, but really it's a conversation. I just want to chat. So no Barbara Walters stuff. It's just, you know, just getting to know you and chatting
Make
a
me
bit.
cry.
So.
Just make me cry.
None of that. So I like to, start off and find out about your background. Like you were originally an agent in New York for 15 years too at CESD. How did you get into voiceover agent work? Were you an actor before that?
Sure.
What's the deal
Well,
there?
I acted as a kid, but no, I actually went to school to be a news reporter. I wanted to be like on air. That failed miserably, but that was where my background was. And I actually moved to New York City. I was producing literally fake news. It was news that was advertising. And we would sell it to like news, and it was basically an advertisement for something, but turned into news. Uh,
Wow.
and I left that because it was terrible,
Hmm.
especially coming from a news background. It was like, but anyway, I was doing nothing in New York City, and my high school drama teacher was a casting director in Philadelphia, and she's like, "You should be an agent." And I was like, "Yes, yes, I should." So I literally, I mean,
Cool.
this is sort of in the late '90s. I emailed every agency in New York City and was like, "Hi, do you need anybody?" And luck had it that what was CED at the time,
Hmm.
was like, "We need an assistant." I didn't even know what voiceover was, to tell you the truth.
Whoa. Okay.
So they were like, "Come on in," and that started it all. So it was not something I was looking to do. It just kind of the stars aligned, and
Yeah.
then my career progressed from there.
That's cool. So all your, voiceover know-how, I will say expertise, came from like on the job, working
Yeah,
at CESD.
yeah. I was lucky in that CESD was one of the top commercial voiceover agents in New York City. I got to work with the top agents that are still there and are still the top agents. So it was a baptism by fire, so to speak. But I
Yeah.
got to work in the studios. I got to sort of hands-on training, and I clawed my way to the top, or
Wow.
to the middle. But yeah, so
I mean,
yeah,
at
it was.
CESD being in the middle, that's like,
Yeah.
that's like the top everywhere. That's really cool.
But yeah, it was fascinating to learn. It really kind of, those of us, sort of, most people don't know what talent agents do, period. But when you think about it, you think of Entourage, and you think of sort of movies and films, and there really are agents who work with working actors.
Mm,
So it was fascinating to sort of watch the commercial voiceover and animation and audiobooks and everything you sort of were talking about earlier, that people have to do that.
yeah,
So you never think
sure.
about it. It's just stuff you hear, and you're like, "Oh wow, people do that and make a really nice living doing it too."
And would
So
you
it was
in New
actually,
York, would they do or at CESD, would they do like directed auditions at the agency?
well, it was sort of, I came in at the beginning of self auditions, kind of like, in the old days, in the 80s and 90s, you still had casting directors. You still went to places to audition. But as it sort of the market opened up and the internet, again, as you said, the internet allowed you to be anywhere.
Right.
We would do auditions in the office. So I would be the director, just sort of, you would take the scripts and then sort of just direct them in the office for auditions.
I mean, that's what a great way to like get experience too, and
yeah,
figure all that stuff out. So then you came out to California. Was that to work at JE, or did
I actually sort of was going to leave the business completely and try to start over again, and it pulled me right back in. I'm trained in absolutely nothing but agenting. So no, it sort of, I again lucked out. I sent a bunch of resumes, and John Erlinson, who owns JE, called me and was like, well, do you want to have a meeting? And a half-hour meeting turned into 2.5 hours, and then I just never left. So it was a,
that's how we want every job interview to go, right? I think I got the job.
I literally left
I'm working
meeting.
now.
I literally left that meeting and I called him and I said, what just happened? And he goes, I don't know, but I really had a good time. And I was like, all right, cool, let's work together. So yeah, it was sort of lucky how it's the head of the office left around the same time. So then I kind of took over. So it, again, right place at the right time, and good luck.
Yeah, totally. Well, that's amazing. That's really cool how that kind of fell into place. And then things went in a totally different direction, and you started casting at 2K.
Yes. I was working. I worked obviously there up here in San Francisco, also well in Marin, and I worked with them regularly. And the casting manager left to go do something else, and they were like, "Do you want to come do this?" And of course, I said no, because I don't know that world, and I don't play. And truth be told, I'm not a gamer, even though I'm becoming one.
You kind of.
I had to really, right. I had to go buy a Switch and like learn everything.
Nice.
But it was a great meeting. It's a whole nother world that I kind of never. I mean, I knew of working with them, but I never worked on that side. So again, it was luck, and it was in the right place at the right time, and. So yeah, it's fascinating to sort of see that side. Having been an agent for so long, you assume what's on the other side of the phone or the email, and then to actually live there and be like, I
just had a little perspective of that.
Yeah,
there's so much more to it.
You also think sometimes that there's this machine, and then you realize, now that I'm there, I realize I'm the machine, and I'm like, it's just one person. Oh, okay. Oh, cool. Okay.
So funny. So what does a typical day look like for you at 2K?
I mean, it's usually we're juggling 10 to 12 games at a time. It's casting voiceover, it's casting mocap and stunts and body movement. A lot of it is business. It's paying people, making sure I've paid all the SAG dues. There's a lot of creativity, but there's a lot of accounting. So nobody told me I had to do math all the time, but it's good to sort of be able to do that and know where the actors are and kind of follow their path. So
I'm sure like your time spent as an agent too, like as a talent agent, like all that business stuff is probably pretty similar.
And that's good because I can anticipate what the agents and the actors are going to want and or need. I know all the union rules. I know, so I could sort of help them along the way, or at least teach the developers and the producers on my end what to expect from the actors.
Yeah, that's great. I actually definitely want to come back to that too and ask, kind of about actors and your thoughts there. But I am curious, like, so the casting process itself, what does that look like? I think I have an assumption of what that looks like. And I've heard, it's thousands of auditions all for the same thing. And you're listening to the first couple seconds, and when and then you're finding a couple that stand out. Is that the case with a lot of what you do, or?
Yes and no. I mean, there is a lot of thought involved and a lot of process, but yes, you're right. It is sort of a machine in a way, in that I will sometimes get 300 auditions for a role, and I only have so many hours in a day. So it is sort of cranking them out. The longer I've been doing this, the more I know a lot of the actors now. Obviously, I knew a lot of the New York actors and some of the LA, but now the local actors. And so I'm already aware of what the producers or the development teams are looking for. So I'm able to give them the sort of right actors. But so my job really is to weed through those 300 and give the best 50 or whatever the team wants to them to go. So I cut out sort of, for lack of a better word, the dead weight, the sort of, oh, that was kind of a mistake. I'm a big fan of,
or the stuff that all sounds the same because everyone made the exact same choice.
Yes. Yeah. And that's almost difficult for me because it's like, it's good, but then it's good 35 times. And I'm like, which one is better? Because I'm not going to send all 35 of the same exact thing.
Yeah.
But it becomes like, well, you know, I'll use you. Like Danny worked for them before. So I'll give Danny, like of these 35, I'll give Danny because I already know him. They already like him. So we'll move you over. So yeah, it is interesting how everybody reads it the same way. And it's nice when you find somebody who took a different approach to it.
Yeah, I think that's like, there's sort of like the obvious one, and maybe a lot of people just go for that, and that's what ends up sounding the same, right?
Yeah, and the truth is, the obvious one is probably going to book it too. I mean, I hate to say, we used to say
like
that
the
all
ironic
the time.
Part.
Yeah, we would say like especially when I was in New York, they give me somebody new, somebody I haven't heard before. So we would go through all of our Broadway lists and this and give them people, and they would hire the one voiceover actor who they get all the time. So it is always like, oh, I want to see new people, and then I'm going to hire who I always like. It's, you know, it's the blessing and a curse of the business, but yeah.
Sure. I just thought of this, and I've wondered for a while. I've never asked what is the process like in actually selecting the audition material? Like, do you have any hand in that, or is there a specific team that does?
It depends on who the team is. You know, for every game that I work with has a different team involved. So some will, what we call sanitize. They will take a real script from the game, but they will wipe it clean of anything that will let you know what the game is. Some will take old scripts. They'll take movie scripts. Some of the more for lack of a better word, creative teams that are really about finding actors, they will go and like, they will find a script that they think reflects what their performance is going to be. So then and sometimes
like to
recognize,
capture the essence of the character without actually involving any of that character's lines from the actual game.
Exactly.
So interesting.
While they're pitching their ideas to each other, they may be pitching it's a 1920s film noir kind of thing. So then they'll go find a script from LA Confidential, and they'll say, this is the vibe we're going for. Or even like they'll go back further and say, okay, here's the Maltese Falcon script, because that will sort of help the actor find its way also, because we're already like, okay, we know we want it to be in this 1920s feel. So a lot of times they will do that. So it really depends on who they are and what they want. We guide them along the way too, of this is what you can do, or this is what you shouldn't do. But for a while, they're the ones in the end who we need to please. So whatever they want to get, we'll help them get it.
Right. That makes perfect sense. Well, that's so interesting though, that it's cool to have that insight into I've always wondered, and I'm glad I thought of it. That was a cool answer. So along your whole journey, along the scope of your career, have you had any big like aha moments where like the light bulb went on and something suddenly clicked? Or, you know, on the other hand, you know, something where you're like, oh, never gonna do that again.
You know, I will say that happens all the time, because this is an ever-changing business, and we need to have sort of everybody, including actors, need to have their finger on the pulse of what's going on. When it comes to all voiceover, there's trends. So you need to sort of keep up with trends. As I get older, my trends sometimes stay behind and I have to go and catch up eventually. But you know,
that's fair. TikTok's really hard to keep up with. You know?
I don't even.
I'm still like wrapping my head around it.
but it's you've got to kind of keep up on pop culture, on references, because like for instance, sort of to date myself, when I started, it was a lot of, if you remember the show Mad About You, which was Helen Hunt and Paul Rudd.
Yeah.
They were the like couple. Okay, so we want their banter. And it kind of slowly progressed, and then it became Ty Burrell and Julie Bowen from Modern Family. Very similar sound, but more modern. And so you start to see that go on. When The Daily Show became uber popular, the sort of snarky announcer became popular also. So instead of the old days in the 70s and 80s where it was the big announcer voice, it more became a joke. The announcer was in on this joke. Instead of yelling at you, they were making fun of it with
kind of
you.
breaking the fourth wall a bit more. And
so we have to keep up, and to the actors too, to keep up on what's popular right now. What are the popular TV shows? Because you'll get references like, I referenced the Maltese Falcon. If nobody knows it, then they've got to go look it up immediately and see, okay, what is that? Because people have things, your job as an actor is to translate these words. And if you don't know what half the words mean, you need to go back and figure it out. Because some people really come up with references that you're just like, I have to Google this person now. I have to figure out who this is because I don't know. Especially, you said the TikTokers. I'm like, nope, don't give me any influencers.
Oh yeah, give me an influencer and I'm like, uh-oh.
I got nothing on that one. But
luckily their videos are easy to find. On the other hand, just Google them, right? No, you don't want to go there. Okay.
Luckily, not enough people. That's still not that popular yet. Depending on the game, some of the games will throw them in, but.
Well, so with all that said, then do you have any specific advice for actors when they're doing auditions?
I mean, I always have said, and when I do take the classes, is be secure in your choices. A lot of times we don't know what we're looking for, and if you don't know what to do and I don't know what I want, neither of us are going to be happy. But if you as an actor commit to something, no matter how freaking crazy it could be, the worst that happens is that was the wrong choice, but at least you made a choice. There's an interesting Hollywood Reporter does a roundtable for like the people they think are going to be Emmy nominated. And Jean Smart, who, if you haven't seen Hacks, she's really amazing in it. She says that a director once told her that as an actor, you're here to solve a problem. And my problem is I need to put somebody in this role. So be less about being insecure and worried about being judged, and just come up with an idea of how you're going to solve my problem. Because my problem is I don't know who the hell I'm going to put in this role, but I need you to come in and say, put me in this role. And then I'll go, oh, okay. So, that I think is where a lot of actors, when they audition, they're auditioning to what they think I want instead of what they want to do. And if I don't know what I want, you're not answering my question. You're just giving me another question. And I'm like, nah, so, and I always say, go big, because as a casting director, I can always tell you to bring it down. But if you start mellow, we just think it's boring. And we're like, okay.
Those are the ones that get skipped after a couple seconds.
Yeah. Especially if everybody has chosen that same thing. A lot of times they'll submit somebody who's British out of nowhere, even though it's like, oh, okay, I don't know if their producers are going to like this, but it's different than everything else. And they might say, hey, cool, okay. Well, a lot of times people, and I'm a big fan of, if there's no race or age or sex then give me everybody. Give me men and women and black and white and Hispanic and Asian, everybody. Don't hold back because you think everybody's going to be white. So that's just again, you need to solve my problem, and I need somebody to put in this role. And I'm like, oh, the faster I can do it, the less work I have to do.
Nice. It's good to keep in mind. We're there to solve a problem. I love that. Just like, everyone put that on a Post-it note, stick it up next to your booth. So is there anything when you get auditions, is there anything you hear where you're just like, ugh, not this again? Or, are there like specific things you're just like, why do people do this? Or,
no, but yeah, you want to make sure that your voiceover audition is the best quality it can be. A lot of people, especially nowadays, because you don't have to leave your house anymore. And so instead of making the audition like going to work, people, it's like offhand or second, or it's like, I'll do this in between that and that. And it sometimes doesn't come out right because you're not paying attention. Now, my next comment is going to be the contradiction to this, but I want you to, but treat it as if you're going to work, as if this, even if if your agent or whomever gives you 10 auditions, then sit down for an hour and prepare yourself and do it. Now, my contradiction is most of the time voiceovers are got by people who can throw it away and not like, especially with voice, you can hear every amount of stress. And, I had actors in the olden times who, were just needed money. So you could, every time they audition for voiceover, you can't hide the stress or the anything in your voice.
I'm sure that especially comes out too, like in the 35 you mentioned that all sound like they all made the same choice. Like if you're really paying attention to nuances, then you're going to hear, oh, this person like is desperate. They made the same choice, but there's desperation in their voice.
Yes. And I think a lot of times on-camera actors are used to distracting, your body, your hair, your hand movements, your outfit is all distracting from listening all the time. And when you're solely listening, and I tend to close my eyes or I don't look at anything because I'm focused. You can hear everything because all of my senses are listening. And so you can, and I always say the hard thing about voiceover is when you're on stage or on film, you cry. When you're on voiceover, you have to sound like you're crying, whatever that means. And so many people are like, oh, well, nobody cries like that in real life. So you have to somehow project that sadness with just your vocal cords. And it's not the easiest thing. I've had, in New York, we had Tony winners who couldn't really do it because they were hitting the rafters. They were, and it's like, voiceover is very intimate.
You can cry without making any sound.
Yeah.
Right. And you can look super real and believable, but you can't cry without making any sound for voiceover. They're not going to see your facial expression.
You stand behind a mic and one tear goes down, and it's like, unless that mic is really strong to hear it roll down your cheek, there's
impressive sound design, right?
But yeah, you're absolutely right. It is hard to sort of get away from looking and sort of just acting those emotions.
And would you say, like, when you're listening to auditions, that you're really looking to see a scope of emotional range? Like, you want to.
It depends. It depends on the role, and it's video games. So
right. I mean, NBA 2K, you're not really looking for someone to cry.
Now, I will say
there's story modes. So
there are story modes, and we have really strong actors who, 2 years ago we had Idris Elba and Rosé. Like, so we have. There are very good actors in it, but I think more of the artistic games than want it. And I think that there's a lot more artists getting involved in video games and the writers. And so a lot of these people are coming from film backgrounds and TV backgrounds. And so they are expecting that same level, even if it's, for the 3 seconds in between the go shoot it scenes. But I think you can see it. And if you play video games, you can see that they are becoming this art form that, when Pac-Man, that was, it's just.
There was no story to Pac-Man.
No, but I think people are looking for it and people enjoy it, more. It's fascinating to me that, again, my day, you just played the video game and you were done. And now it's like an experience too.
Totally. Absolutely. I mean, 100 years from now, people are going to be taking video game classes similar to literature classes, right? Like analyzing the games of 100 years ago and what was the story? How did that reflect the times? And
I think there are already those classes. I think they already exist. I think they already exist. But yeah, I mean, I do think that video games have become such a huge part of entertainment, especially during this pandemic, that there's no going back. There's only getting more. I mean, I think years from now, you're going to be doing virtual reality games where we play and we're literally in the game. It's already starting, but I think that's our next thing is as the player become an actor with the actors.
That's a trip even to think about, like live actors being in games or something. Like, imagine that.
Who knows? We never leave our house, so this is what we do. This is how we interact now.
Exactly. So what are your thoughts on second takes?
I love second takes. It's funny, when I was in New York, it was literally like people would do 40 takes. Like I moved out here and everybody was about one take and that was it. And I'm like, now do it differently. The idea, a lot of people do second takes and it's literally the same take as the first one. But I love second takes. I love third takes because obviously if I like your first take enough, I'm going to continue to listen to see what else you can do. A lot of times what some of my producers will do is we might be holding an audition for character A, but we may be listening for B, C, D, and E also. So for you to give me something a little different in your second take or your third take, it might, okay, well, that fits this role instead of the role they auditioned for. Okay, well, we can put him in as this guy. So I love it. I don't understand why people don't do more of it.
Are you ever disappointed when you hear like a really great first take and there's not a second take after? Are you ever like, oh, damn, I really wish I actually had see what else this person could do?
I absolutely do sometimes. I'm sometimes just kind of shocked when it ends. I'm like, where's the second? I think just because I'm used to there being more takes that when it stops, I'm like, why isn't there another one? That won't stop me from hiring them, but it will limit me from what we can hire them for. But yeah, I never understand why people, I mean, listen, as we kind of said at the beginning, I can get through 3 seconds and delete it. So if you happen to have a minute worth of audition here and I like it, then I might listen to it all. It's no harm, no foul on my end because you're not, the days of the CDs or the tape. So, we're not worried about size anymore.
Sure, yeah, you just email it.
So so kind of keep and if you have an interesting idea, like, okay, so you see the audition and you sort of do what you think is expected. Well, then the second one, do it weird or unusual or take a different take on it. Or because you never know. I may go, oh shit, that's it. So
that's great. Well, thanks. I'm gonna because sometimes I'll be in the booth and I know exactly what I want to do on my first take. And I'm like, I feel like I should do a second take here, but I don't really, nothing's coming to me. Like, should I try hard to make a second take happen or is it okay?
If there's nothing coming and you're just going to do the same thing,
don't force it.
Don't force it. But it is good to make choices, to make to do different. And it also could be that you're the same character, but you're kind of giving it different motives, or you're giving him different situations, different context, different emphasize. You could, and that it's like, okay, well, this one I'm trying to get this rock. Okay, well, this one I'm trying to get past this. You can sort of give yourself just a little bit of a different. So maybe it sounds similar, but the motive and everything else is a little different feel of it.
Sure.
I'm not telling you, like, if you're doing 2 or 3 takes that you need to pull different character choices out completely, but just a slight tweak or an interesting kind of vibe, or Energy California and energy. That's what we need, because we may hear the first one and like your voice type, but not like the acting part, and then hear the second one and go, oh, okay, yeah, okay, he's getting it now. Because again, like I said, sometimes we listen and go, that's the character, because we didn't know what the character was. So that helps us.
I know there's in that documentary, I Know That Voice, they talk about how for Bender, like classic iconic character, right? They didn't really know what they were looking for. Everyone came in with this robot, typical robot voices. And then DiMaggio comes in and does this like, totally out there, not robotic voice at all. And they're like, we had no idea that's what we wanted, but that's it. That always stuck with me.
I will say it always pays to, like I said, make that choice, because that choice may become the character. Literally, may rewrite the character because they love that voice so much. And it's happened, and it happens a lot. Even in film and TV, they suddenly, they're like, you're who I want. We're going to rewrite everything now. But it's good choices.
So kind of summarizing everything you said, how can, and even if you've already said it, how can an actor solve your problem then? Like, what specifically is, how does an actor do that?
Well, I mean, just again, come with the confidence that your choice is the right choice.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
And don't second guess yourself. Like, do the research. It always helps. Now especially when you're auditioning for video games, you don't know what game it is. We have so many code names that even if it's a repetitive game, like if it's already out, you won't know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But you will know from the direction, kind of a theme and what the feel is, and just make a solid, confident choice of the audition you're going to do, and then give it all, and then just stop thinking about it and go to the next.
Send it, let it go, and move on.
Exactly. They always say, an audition's job, an actor's job is to audition, and once in a while you get paid.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, I think, where some actors lose it, is actors think that to be an actor, you need to work. When really, to be an actor, you need to perfect your audition process and then hope that somebody's going to hire you. But you can't be in control of that. You're not in control of who hires you. You're in control of what you're going to bring to the table. And then you put that plate down and you leave and you hope they eat it. And if they don't, then you fix your next job.
You made a good meal and you just...
we used to, a lot of time actors, especially when I was an agent, they're like, what's the feedback? What's feedback did I get from that casting director or that producer or that director? And I said, they called you back for another audition. That's your feedback. That means they liked you. Might not have booked the job, but they liked you enough to audition you again. Mm-hmm. So just keep sort of knowing that you're going in the right direction and just stay confident. I think that's a lot of actors lose confidence, especially if they're not booking a lot. And especially up, to the San Francisco market, it's not actually in the world itself, voiceover is not there's not a plethora of work anymore in comparison to the number of actors who want to do it. So you want to sort of keep your muscles warm too. And about taking classes, you want to keep doing, I always say, nobody can sit on the couch and then get up and run a marathon. Right. So nobody can not. I
definitely can't run a marathon right now.
Well, yeah, I can't even do that. But if you aren't doing voiceover and then you get an audition, you're not going to be on your A game because you haven't warmed up. So you want to keep either taking classes or keep practicing yourself, or with the internet, you could Google 100, there's scripts everywhere that you could just sort of practice and record yourself and just keep that.
We're, constantly on our phones, like just read something out loud that you're scrolling through, even if it's someone's dumb Facebook post, like just read it out loud and give it a voice, right?
Yeah. Because you're keeping your muscle warm, you're keeping sort of the ideas of how to do this warm, because that's there is sometimes a science to voiceover, it's like in commercials, there's a cadence of how things are said. And if you stop saying it, especially if you live alone and you don't really talk to people, and you never leave your house because the world's ending. So, you want to keep that going, and you want to keep learning and listening and taking classes. And like you said, finding scripts and just reading them aloud. And even though we don't always hear our voices while we're talking correctly, record yourself and then listen back and critique yourself as you would critique another actor. And it helps. It does help to sort of, and also listen. Yeah,
because you have to be objective when you're listening to your own voice, which is so hard to do, right? Because we're so subjective on our own performance.
But also listen to what's booking. If you're interested in commercials, listen to who booked. Especially as you're doing auditions, you'll start to see a commercial come on. You'll be like, I know that script. Well, who booked it? How did they book it? What were they doing that I didn't do right? Doesn't mean you're bad. Doesn't mean you're wrong. But that's what booked it.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes you're like, wow, that person's terrible.
There was one commercial, I won't say which, but it came back. Like they did 4 or 5 rounds of casting. Like they clearly could not find the voice. And when I heard the one that finally went on, I was like, really? That sounded like, someone on the street, like who had no training. I'm like, that's what they wanted. And, to your point.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is a lot of kind of segueing into more commercial work. It is, a lot of them are looking for real sound. Now, in the old days, real sound was an actor being conversational. And then suddenly it just became real. And it's like, so did you pay this dude that you just found on a street corner? I don't, I'm with you. It's like, huh? How did that book? Because it just doesn't even sound nice. It doesn't even sound inviting. Like,
but
I want to
buy
buy
it. Does sound real.
But it does sound real. And,
I'm
sure people spent millions of dollars on studies to say that this helps sell
focus
if you
groups
sound
and
real.
all that.
But I'm still, I like the classic voiceover sound still, what I grew up with.
So at 2K, of the games that have, that are on IMDb, do you have a favorite that you've worked on? Do you need me to remind you of which ones are
No, I'm trying
okay
to
talk
remember.
about?
No. I mean, I really like the golf game.
Okay.
So that's, but Borderlands is fun. Mafias, I like them all. I play them not out of love. I play them out of research and work. So I don't, and I think that's fun for me, is I do a job and then I forget about it. And even as an agent, we did that, because sometimes, when we're producing a video game, it could be years before it comes out. So a lot of times I forgot that I even worked on it. And you're like, oh yeah, I remember that game. Okay, oh yeah. So, it's cleansing to sort of wipe it out. I'm done. I don't want to think about it anymore until it comes out. But yeah, I don't have. You stumped me on that one.
No, that's okay. Totally fair. I know you said you aren't like a big gamer either, that you're just getting into it.
I find them all interesting. I think it's the science and the art behind putting them together is fascinating to me now, because I know how a film is produced. I know how a commercial is produced, but how you sort of choose your own adventure, this game, and the technology behind, well, when I walk here, another voice, like that, to me is what I'm starting to get more and more into, is how did they even come up with this?
Yeah.
So
as pertains to voiceover, like when you have 3 dialogue options and then the person responds to each one differently, like they're creating pathways of dialogue, that it's not just one script. It's like this script for this situation, but then you say this and that comes up, and it's I've actually started playing Zelda, the new Zelda one, and it's just open world, and that's like, what? How? What? You just sort of walk around until you hit the right thing, and then it talks to you. It's fascinating to me. Okay, go.
Like how they do this, how the technology works, and just this little cartridge. It's insane.
So let's since we got about 20 minutes left, let's move to some questions that people that are listening are asking, and see what you say to those. So Abir says, could you talk about union versus non-union games and how difficult it is to get work in both?
Okay. I just saw JR's comment. Sorry.
As president of your Tom Celia fan, we'll come back to that.
So union, I mean, they're both difficult in their own ways. Non-union obviously has there's a lot more people involved. There's a lot more, I mean, actors involved. As a casting director, I have to do a lot more work for non-union games, because it's not as easy as just calling your union agents and getting auditions. I think they're both have the same, when you're doing a non-union game or a union game, they're both, I'm trying to kind of know the right words. They're both hard to get into, but and when you're doing non-union, you want to make sure that you pay attention to your contract, that you look at everything, because you don't have a union to sort of back you up on it. But on a whole, especially nowadays, unfortunately, the same quality goes. There used to be a time where non-union sort of meant shit quality. Well, we don't have a lot of money, so we went out. Nowadays, there's people throwing money at non-union games and commercials and films more than they did. And it's kind of silly. I tend to err on union just because I understand them. And you know what you're going to get in the end. But yeah, it really is a crapshoot of what you get. There are some really big quality things out there that are non-union nowadays. And there's some crap jobs that are union. So you really, you don't know. And people will go back and forth easily. Again, I having worked for union talent agencies all my life, I tend to side with a union project. Plus, most of the established actors have joined the union, because isn't that kind of your goal as an actor, is when you can say you joined SAG-AFTRA, you made it.
Right. Very
even though
often
you might
the
be
case.
working all the time, non-union, you sort of have that, I did it, even though I'm making less money as a union.
I mean, you get a card. You can actually I'm proof that I'm an actor right here.
And the new president is the nanny. So Fran Drescher, you get to talk to Fran Drescher all the time. I mean, come on.
Yeah, and that alone is enough reason to join.
Right. But I mean, I know it was kind of a non-answer, because it really, there's no big delineation anymore that between them. It's still,
and that's honestly, it's a whole topic too. You could have an hour meeting just talking about the union, and which I'm sure we will at some point. Stay tuned. Let's move to another question from Lisa. She said, if someone is not, and we'll get to JRs, don't worry. If someone is not as on the pulse for video games, what would be some good starter games to listen to for research?
I mean, I think go to YouTube. Everything's on freaking YouTube nowadays. And just start to kind of go through the games. I know like the NBA has a movie in the middle, and those, so you don't have to play the whole game. You could just watch the movie and you start to see, you know, with every celebrity that's in it, there are 20 side characters. You know, take NBA, there's the press agents, there's, you know, the ball boy, so there are a lot of little roles in there. And what a lot of times we'll do is you put a voice over, like you hire a voiceover actor to be the voice, and then you hire an extra or a background actor to do the movement. So your voice will be on some random person's body. But I think it's all the games are so different, and everybody has such a different, you know, you look at Mafia, which is sort of more noir kind of things. You look at things like Borderlands and BioShock that are shoot 'em up kind of in post-apocalyptic worlds. So the tones are all very different in them, because the world they're living in is very different. But
so,
it starts,
so when you watch these videos on YouTube, like look for the tone too. Don't just look at the characters and the acting choices, but look at how that relates to the tone of the game. And
I mean, a lot of times we're aware that, again, you guys don't, and when you're auditioning, you don't know sometimes and we'll purposely leave a lot of that out. But we also kind of can tell that you're directable. And again, I think that kind of goes back to your multiple takes. If I can hear you making choices, then I know that you're directable. And that is something that we want, is if we change, you need, as an actor, need to be able to pivot also. So when you're doing multiple takes, we could see, oh, look, he took a different moment. Okay, cool. And a lot of times they'll do that if we do callbacks, which in voiceover is not as likely as motion capture. But you can, as long as you're directable, people will be more apt to get you, to take you on.
Make big choices and you'll show them that you're directable.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Lynn Foley asks, as a female in my 60s with 14 years of voice acting experience, I want to do more VO for gaming, but I find that there's few roles for mature women. Do you see that changing at all in the future?
I think
what are your thoughts there?
There are. I think that, you know, taking Mafia again, there were a lot of older characters in Mafia. We do cast a lot of 60 plus act, a lot is, you know, but a handful of, you know, if there's 40 people in a cast, 6 or 7 will be, you know, seniors or there. So I think there's a lot of that, especially when you're looking at these games with big films involved, you know, you're going to interact with people of all ages when you're out in the world. So there are a lot of older characters, and some of the older characters are becoming more and more. I think, as my generation gets older and the big video game generation underneath me gets older, they're still playing. My friends are,
video games used to be for kids, right? But now it's like,
yeah,
it's
but
not.
my buddy like bonds with his son, and one will sit in his bedroom and the other's in the living room, and they play video games together, like they're on their headsets together, and that's their bonding. And they're 15 and 45, but
awesome.
And I think that especially as like my godson, he grows up now, so when my generation turns 60, we're still playing video games, so we're going to want to see ourselves in those. And I think as the producers and the developers, I mean, most of the people I work with are in there. When I started, I thought I was going to be the oldest one in the room. And a lot of them are in their 40s and 50s, and they're creating these games. So I think we're going to continue to see more and more a range. I also think it's kind of beyond color lines and gender. There's a lot of games with, the people are starting to put non-binary characters. So a lot of, and I think it also helps that most of the video games tend to be liberal kind of thinking. So people are starting to look at, let's, make more Black lead characters, and let's have an older, Italian woman, so it's interesting that people are starting to, and I think money talks. And if people are buying these games, then they're going to continue to make them.
Money talks is totally true. AAA companies and stuff, that's just facts, man. Yeah.
And my dad used to always say, he said, there's no black and white, there's only green. In the end, if you're making money, they will do whatever they tell you to do.
So true, though. All right, brace yourself. Here is JR's question. As president of your Tom Celia fan club, I'm curious to know how extra we should be on our online marketing, social media, and websites with regards to our VO brand if we want to break into video game space. For most of us starting out, we start in mainstream commercial voice acting space, which is more often traditional sounding than the eccentric or niche style of video games. Is it worth us spending time on our online marketing pursuits to make us more marketable for video games? Would our social media or marketing efforts ever impact whether or not you want to book us for a video game audition? Or is the time just better spent in honing our actual video game VO audition craft?
I agree with the end, purely because I'm somebody who I'm cheap. So I don't want you spending a lot of money on these things that might not do it. Now, this is just coming from me. Everybody in this business is going to have a different opinion. I don't have the time or the energy to sort of go through everybody's online presence, unless I'm already friends with you, unless I already know you. That is more used to sort of get agents. Agents are going to now let me rephrase that, because there are times when I am desperately in need for a specific thing, and we'll start Googling it and hoping that it pops up. So you have weird skills or things, and keep them going online. Or make sure your agent is aware that, I need somebody to talk backwards, let's say, and I don't know how the hell I'm going to find that, but there are people who know how to talk backwards. So you want to sort of keep it going, but I don't, it's like the olden days were the postcards where, I'm in a play, here's a postcard, I just voiced this thing. I don't get mail anymore. And so it's not as easy for you to promote yourself like that. Once you get in the door, and especially for JR, since I know him, then you start to harass me and you say, hey, look, I did this. Oh, I did that. Then that's fine. That's good. But, to sort of waste money on a big marketing push might not be the best use of your money. Especially because 9 times out of 10, everything we do nowadays is audition. So very rarely am I going to go, oh, just put Danny in that role, because everybody needs to hear everything nowadays. So, marketing is important. Your personal brand is important. It's good to have the knowledge of, kind of shifting from commercial narration voiceover to more animated video game voiceover. But I would say focus on perfecting your craft and then excelling in all your auditions, and even going, if you're going to if you're going to spend money, like, go to those pay to play sites and start to look at auditioning on I don't know what exists anymore, but
Mhm.
Voices 1, 2, 3, and start to use that as your practice to get more work. The more work you have, the more work you're going to get. Work begets work. So if you get your foot in a video game door, like I said, baby, we'll keep hiring you. Oh, just put, okay, you know, he worked on this, we'll just have him work again on that. And those things will happen. But you know, the sort of mailing, marketing, email world it's so saturated too that and emails are easy to delete. So if you're kind of, oh, I'm going to just tell everybody that I'm here, it's sort of an LA thing. And I think even LA is slowly getting away from it because it's just so much that you can't. And again, there's always that one story that I randomly emailed somebody and next thing I know, I was the lead of a game. But
That's the exception, not the rule.
It's the exception, not the rule. But it does happen. So I don't want to like, I always say these things and somebody's like, well, I emailed blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, but that's not everybody doesn't get to do. You know, I had one actress in New York who literally got off a bus from Kansas and got the lead role in Hairspray on Broadway. And I was like, that doesn't happen to normal people.
No, that's like people make stories about, you know, they'll make a movie about that specific thing happening because it's so unbelievable.
She got off the bus with her suitcase and went directly to an open call. I'm like, that doesn't normally happen. You were lucky by that. And there's even a voiceover. Like I had one actor in particular who booked his first audition. And I was like, that never happened. He never booked another thing, but he booked that first audition and he was convinced it just fell in his lap. And I'm like, you were lucky. So it does not, yeah.
Let's move to one more question. Let's see here. Do you need an agent? It seems that being union seems that you need an agent to get video game auditions. I guess at 2K specifically, do you go just through agents or do you have your own kind of casting list as well?
We have a little of both. Like I said, it's easy for me to just send, you know, an Age of Stars or JE or MDT and just say, here, figure this out for me and send it back. But we do have especially my colleagues more than I do, but like one has a LinkedIn thing that she just keeps everybody who does it. And then when I teach these classes, I tend to send her all of your demos when you guys send it to me. And she keeps a kind of a non-union pool where it's easier to get your audition. But that's the kind of thing is very rarely am I doing a public audition in any way. So if you don't have a way of me reaching you, like
already being there when the casting call comes, right?
Like it's very, you know, we tried to sort of do the, you know, put it on Facebook and the problem is you get a lot of bottom feeders, for lack of a better word, of you're like, there's a reason why I don't do this. Because there's a lot of crap. Now, again, as always, the exception, there might be 4 or 5 diamonds in this 50 pile of coal. But, you know, it is easier for me to have somebody else, especially if I'm dealing with thousands of auditions. Somebody else is doing the work for me and then sending them
I mean, the agencies are doing the vetting, so to speak. And,
yes,
you know.
Yes. Now, that's not true. You know, in the old days, I think it was more true. I think nowadays they have the same mindset I have of they don't know what I want, so they're going to send me everything. And sometimes I'm like, did you really mean to send this 3 people who were shit? But that, you know, you never know. And again, I may find somebody that I like. And it's interesting, like with my colleagues in my department, we'll go through. Well, usually a lot of times we'll all listen separately and then we'll send a list to each other of here are my top 10, here are my top 10. And it's interesting sometimes what I liked versus what they liked. And there's age difference, you know, there's 10 years.
You find that there's often an overlap between your top 10s, like 5 are like the same across the board. And then you've got 5 variables and it's
interesting to see like the newest colleague, she's a total Gen Z millennial, like young woman. And it's interesting to kind of hear what she likes versus what I like. Because she grew up in a different time and her influences are totally different. And I have to, as my job is to keep that in mind. I have learned to never be married to my opinion anymore because I don't know, you know, it's my opinion. So I may love this audition and she's like, that sucks. we'll talk about it. Usually we battle each other and we have to fight for who we like. And a lot of times it's like, I don't like him that much, but we will have conversations about why I liked them and she didn't, why they, so it also helps me to keep current also, because I can tell you I'm not on the TikTok, so I got no clue what's going on.
Don't do it. Don't give in.
No.
You'll just be there for hours. Do you use specific agencies always, like talent agencies that are your go-tos, like in the Bay Area or elsewhere?
Yes and no. I obviously I go to JE because I know them and I know who their actors are. But sometimes I tend to have like the top, especially like in LA, I tend to go to the kind of top 8 voiceover. But if we're looking for a lot of people, I'm going to open it up to everybody because there are certain agencies that handle specific kinds of people. So if I'm like Mafia, there was like huge scenes in Chinatown. I needed Chinese speaking actual. So interestingly, not a lot of Asian actors in San Francisco that are union and will do video games. So there are specific agencies in LA that handle that. So we kind of, we have a huge list of all of our contacts, and some are for certain things, but I want to keep it because there are going to be up and coming actors that are probably starting at these smaller agencies.
Sure.
That I would rather have than somebody, it's new, it's a new sound, it's a new energy and a new vibe in these games. So I want to keep my finger on everybody, no matter who they are. So no, there is not a world where you've got to be at CESD or you've got to be at Buchwald or you've got to be at Atlas to do it. You can also go to the smaller places and still get the same opportunity.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think we have time for one more question. This is a good one here. A lot of us are auditioning on online job sites. What suggestions do you have for establishing new connections with real people who can help lead to more work?
That's a good one. There's a fine line between...
There's the Barbara Walters question.
Yeah. There's a fine line between annoying and sort of aggressive. And you want to walk that line. So
someone told me once, don't be sticky.
Yeah. Like, don't be creepy. Don't be, and I get it. I get that you're wanting to promote yourself as an actor and you want to come after all these sort of people, whether they're agents or casting directors or producers but you're right. Don't cling. Come, walk in, wave, and get the hell out. But I think as you start to book things or even if you start to have callbacks or keep contact with those people. So if you're sort of on, you're on Voice Rabbit or whatever those things are called, and somebody calls you and is interested, well, then they go on your professional list because they're aware of you. I have never been a fan of cold calling. I'm not good at that kind of sales, but I'm good at selling selling to people I know. So I can call somebody and say, hey, so another thing is you book a little job, great. Well, then talk to that director and say, hey, do you have any contacts? Can you get me in a door? Because as an agent, I would see people recommended before I would see people who pulled, because half my job as an agent was to get you in the door of a casting director or director, and if they're recommending it, half my job is done. So I was more apt to say, oh, okay, so this casting director likes you, or in the commercial world, Gray Advertising had a big casting in New York, and when they sent people, I'm like, well, they're already in your door, so I now want them. A lot of course,
anytime you have the opportunity to get in the door, that's that's amazing, that's golden. But then the rest is up to you. You have to bring it. That's your time. So don't mess that up.
Yeah, keep those contacts going. Those are better. I think a lot of times people, what is a bird in hand is worth two in a book. Who this director casting person is, and you already have a rapport with them. So don't start looking for somebody else. Stay with this person and see, again, don't be sticky, but stay with them and see what they can do. Again, they like you, they booked you on something, they may book you on 4 things. And then you start to put a real reel together that of things that are actually out in the world. And then you start to kind of go from there. There are people who were, actors who fell into voiceover and then realized that they didn't have to brush their hair anymore. And then it was like they just became a voiceover actor for the rest of their lives. They don't even have headshots anymore because they, so you can fall into things and you just keep getting hired again and again and again. I know a lot of my answers are very.
Your answers are amazing, Tom.
They're not. No, they're not. It's not. It's hard to be concrete in this business. It's hard because
totally.
Everybody has a
like you said
opinion.
in the very beginning, like everything's changing too. And even if you are concrete and you have like the exact right answer, well, it's probably going to change in like 2 months. So
totally. And then you never know. The world changes so quickly. Who knows what are we're talking about. The news was talking about working from home through next year now. So it's like, well, more video games to play, more movies to watch. I mean, who knew that our new way of watching movies would be released on HBO Max? That was, 18 months ago. That would have been horror.
Brand new,
shocking.
like box office hits are in the theaters.
The Suicide Squad opened on HBO. I did not have to go anywhere to see it, which I love. But yeah, it's really sort of listening and watching the world and know where it's going next. And then being on the forefront, looking ahead and figuring out what the next trend is going to be may also be smart because it sets you apart. You're doing more than people even thought you could do.
Yeah, don't bring like what's current now, bring what's current tomorrow.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much, Tom. This was so incredible. Like your advice, your insight into what you do. Actually, a lot of this was just totally new for me too. So really great to hear this. Folks listening, if you want to work to take class with Tom, I put 2 links in the chat. He's got promos in retail, like years of experience, as a talent agent, is fantastic at both of these. He's been teaching this class for years for us. And then Play of the Game is all about video game auditions. We've got an in-person and online option for that one. Promos and retail is just in person. So if you're in the Bay Area, you can come do that one. And thank you again, Tom. Thank you everyone for coming.
Thank you. Hi, Brian. I keep seeing your things. Hi, Brian. And I will see some of you again in the classes. So thank you.
Awesome. Take care, Tom. Take care, everyone.
Bye.